I'm back. It's been a little while since I made a last video. We've been doing some adjusting here in the listening room. As you can see, we moved the Sabrinas out and we moved the Sasha DAWs in. I'm assuming that there's a number of people now that the Sasha Vs are out that may be scooping up good deals on the Sasha DAW, which are still a wonderful speaker, as I did. And I thought, I might just share a couple insights to set up from what I encountered doing the DAW. I actually had them ship across the country to my house. They showed up in crates and they bring them up to the driveway. Actually, they dropped them right in the garage, but that's as far as they'll take them. So from there, it's up to you, unless you have a dealer set them up professionally. I actually personally didn't want a dealer to set them up just because I really enjoy when it's not nice outside, if it's raining or if it's super hot and muggy or if it's super cold. Living here in the center of the country, we get all of those variations. It's fun, to not be working in the garage, on the garage floor on something. It's fun to do it inside. So I actually really enjoy and wanted to enjoy the time spent tweaking them. It's part of the hobby, right? So I'll just kind of share, again, this isn't professional, but maybe some of the things that I came across in setting up the DAWs that might help somebody out there. So that's what this video is really all about. And if you have any questions, drop them down below. Again, questions benefit the whole group. If there's something I did wrong, if there's something else that you would recommend, if you came across any different outcomes in your adjustments than from what I found, that'd be great. Just leave your comments down below. Happy to answer any questions too if you have questions, but let's get started. The first part of the steps to the DAWs is finding a spot to put them. And I'm not going to go over the uncrating. I can show you a couple pictures of them in crates in the garage floor. The crates are quite substantial, but really it's relatively easy for 1 to 2 people to get them out of the crates, because basically you just unscrew the boxes, unscrew the lid to each of the component. There's 3 different boxes that you'll get. So the woofer modules are each in their own case, and then the upper modules that you see here, just like this piece, there's 2 of them, obviously, and they come in a single crate. So there's three crates that you'll get. Simple Phillips screwdriver, if you've got a drill, battery powered drill to pull out the screws, that's super helpful. This is pretty easy, self-explanatory, and then you just tip them up. Actually, I recommend tipping them up and then unscrewing the woofer modules and then rolling them out. They should come on casters, and you just roll them out. Right at that point is when you really get to experience the heft of these things. So like the size, it seems like you should really easily be able to carry them until you roll them out and it feels like you're moving a slab of granite or a slab of marble. And then you're wondering, how am I going to get these up the few steps into the house? And in my case, down about 10, 15 steps into the basement of my listening area here. So I called Wilson. I asked him how much the bottom weighs of these DIWs, and they thought that they were around 170, 180 pounds. So if you think that you and one helper can do that, I guess more power to you. But one of the things that I think I would do differently again is maybe find stronger friends than I am to have them just move them down into your area or up into your area wherever you've got them, or hire it like a piano mover, because they're extremely heavy. And even harder than that is, where do you grab onto these things? So they're slippery. These came wrapped. I didn't want to unwrap them before we moved them down into the basement. They actually came with saran wrap wrapped all around them. They've got those speaker terminals on the back of them. It makes them hard to grab. You can't really set them down. Once you get moving down a set of stairs, it's like full send. You got to go. So actually, I'm not a super strong guy. massive weightlifter, and my wife isn't either, but the two of us were able to get each of those bottom modules, the base module, down the stairs, but it was not pretty. Thankfully we didn't have any issues, but issues could have come up pretty easily. So I think that's my first part to this setup thing, is if you've got really healthy, strong friends, recruit them, or piano movers, to get these things into space. But it is something to be aware of, obviously. I think you know that going into it, but they're surprisingly heavier than one would think. Just looking at their size in a showroom, for example. So be prepared for the heft, and again, just the awkwardness of moving them down. So that's the first step. They roll easily. The casters are super nice, whether you've got carpets or hardwood floors or even tile floors. I think these went across all of those surfaces without any issues. So once you get them into spot, you can kind of start tweaking them in general, of like where you kind of want them. And then you can start thinking about taking the casters off, and that's the next step. All right, we're on to the next step of the Sasha DAW setups. You've moved your bass cabinets, or puppy, or woofer cabinets, whatever you want to call them, into spot on the casters. I recommend then getting them in an approximate space of where you want them to set up. Now, a lot of people say, tweak them, move them around on their casters, but I found that hard to do, because if casters, they're swiveling around. You get some that are pointed in different directions. They don't slide easy or move easy, or you've all probably experienced this with furniture or something like that, or you move the casters or move the speaker a certain way, and the casters put a little bit of a tension and it moves back. So what I would honestly recommend is get them to approximately where you want them, get them towed in a little bit. The DAWs are very directional speakers, and so what they recommend is that really you should just lightly, from your seating position, you should lightly see very little of the side of the speaker. So you can kind of, guesstimate, this is without, again, any listening. You'll tweak with your ears later. But get them, approximately where you might think you'll want them in your room, where you think they might have the best sound, maybe close to where an existing pair of speakers were placed. And then the next step that I recommend is to do your tweaking, is to actually remove those casters. Wilson sells a Wilson Audio jack, and it's cool. It's painted. It says Wilson Audio. It's got a nice little rubber pad on the top of it, but it's $1,000 or more. And so somebody on a forum tipped me off to this, but it's a really cool piece. I didn't see any pictures of it. I just saw people talking about it, so I thought that I'd show you what I used. I even asked the dealer that sometimes they'll get a couple of guys to just tilt the speaker cabinet to one direction, and then they'll have another guy put on the diodes and the spikes. If you're doing it just by yourself, you want a relaxing thing, and you want to make it easier on yourself, and for future movement or future spike replace or diode replace, if you upgrade to diodes or get a different diode. And again, you want to do it yourself, which I did. Again, I just kind of liked the relaxing time down here to do after work. Anyway, you can get the Wilson Audio jack, or from California Car Cover, and I'm not sponsored obviously by them, I'm just helping you get some tips here. They have this low pro jack. Actually, you can use it to jack up your hot rod too if you want to. But this thing comes super handy. I'll show you this thing in action here. But it's 3/4 of an inch thick. It doesn't have a square pad like the Wilson one, but this is rubber here in the middle. Nice machined aluminum. I mean, this thing could be on decoration. It's really pretty, but it's called the Low Pro Jack. And you can see the weight limit. It's way above what the whole entire Wilson speaker would weigh. Basically, it just has a wrench, and you turn this little deal and it just slowly jacks them up. This to my doorstep is about 215 bucks. So kind of a nice little piece to have on hand for moving around speakers or changing diodes or whatever you might be doing.
All right, guys, when you're installing your diodes, when you are removing your casters, when you're putting your diodes onto the carpet sliders, making adjustments, leveling, this is where the jack come in really, really handy. So we're going to show this in action with this amazing lighting that we have down here. And basically, you slide your jack. I did it side to side. I don't think I'd recommend doing it front and back. I'd do it side by side. If you have a spotter to spot or hold on the upper module, if you're doing this with the upper module on it, I would definitely recommend a spotter because it does move around fairly easily. If you want to be safe, if you're doing it by yourself, I would recommend taking the upper module off before you jack it up. That way you don't have to worry about any damage. Or if you want to live on the wild side like I do, if you're not jacking it up that much, it may stay put. But as a disclosure, I recommend having a spotter or taking the upper module off. So anyway, you slide this under. One of the things that I want to, it's just like a car. You want this rubber pad to end up, let's pretend this is the frame of the speaker. I want it on the frame of the speaker, and I say that because there's actually a cutout, an opening under the bottom of the Sashas, and actually it's under the bottom of the Sabrinas. It may be under the bottom of the Alexias too. That it's an access panel to get to the woofer resistors. And so I wouldn't recommend jacking up on that. And if you look under it, you can see it, but I would recommend just putting this under there, right in the center. Actually, you might want to even start it slowly. Get it right in the center. I went in about, I don't think I went in 1/4 of an inch. I'm in about a little over 1/8 of an inch. Maybe that's about 1/8 of an inch actually. You don't want it to slide off for whatever reason and then scratch the side of your speaker. That would be terrible. It might be under there 1/4 of an inch, and I think that you'll be good. If you're using the Wilson jack, it's a similar setup to this. If you're using this Pro jack from California Car Cover, you can use a, what is this? My eyesight's no good. It's a, what is it? It's a 17/16 box end with a ratchet. If you have that, it's helpful. You just buy one of them too if you want and keep it with your Low Pro. Slides on and then you just start jacking the speaker up. See how easy that is? And voila, make your changes to your diodes. You can see we've got a gap under here now. And the other cool thing about this, versus having your buddies just lean them on the side, is that you can lower it back down extremely easy too. Just by cranking the opposite direction. Voila.
All right, I can't remember what tip we're on. Maybe I'll count them down as I edit this thing for y'all. But the next thing that I recommend, again, people say to use the casters to get them into place before you put the diodes on. But I think that that's just to get them into the proper approximate space that you want them in. And then what I'd actually recommend is put these speakers onto some type of a slider, because it makes it so much easier to like exactly dial in the positioning when you're moving them around to get each of the left and right channel exactly forward, backward, side, front, tilt, in exact measurements. Like I got them down to about 1/16 of an inch, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, but that's about as close that I think that I could get them with a standard tape measure. But these Scotch sliders, I'm showing you the Sabrinas here because I've already got the DAW set up. But I say use your jack. Once you have the diodes set up, installed, lower your jack onto some carpet sliders. For the DAWs, I actually use this Scotch brand. They're plastic on the bottom because, as you can see, I'm on a carpeted surface, but they make them for wood and tile floors where they're actually felt instead of plastic on the bottom of them. They've got a nice thick foam pad to them, and then a big slider. They make them bigger than this too if you want it even easier to slide, but the DAW slide just fine on these. They're about 5 inches. They say 4 and 15/16, but they're about 5-inch circles. But you can see here, I can actually take the Sabrina with one hand and move it. Like that's how easy and like how accurate you can get it to slide, because then you can take your tape measure and put it right on that little spike right down there. Don't put the spikes down onto the mat because they'll go right through the carpet slider. Put them on the little aluminum discs, and then you can move them around. Now it's time to get them all leveled. Now the next level, the upgrade from the DAW, is the V. They come with integrated bubble levels. It's pretty fancy with a little crosshair on them. The DAWs do not have that, so the next tip is get yourself a nice little bubble level from Amazon. This might be $5 or $10, maybe $15, but it's pretty nice because then you just set it on the top of the woofer cabinet, and then you can make your fine-tuning adjustments to your diodes or your spikes to get them perfectly level, because everything is about precision here. I try and get everything to about 1/16 of an inch. My eyes aren't that good, so I can't see anything smaller than that. But check out this level, it's really cool. You just lay it flat on the top of the woofer cabinet, adjust your spikes. Get some, if you're on a hard floor, get some pads for your knees too. If you're older like me and have sore knees. And set your bubble level on top, and then you can get it right into the center. Check this out, $15. This is easier to see than the levels that are built into the V's, and it's got a really cool crosshair on it too, so you can really dial it in. When you're done with it, kind of makes like a cool desk paperweight because it's got some weight to it. It's nice. Genisor bubble. Yes, before we leave the setup of the spikes and the diodes, one of the things that I wanted to share with you with my experience, I actually took a caliper tool and measured. This was, again, my OCD kicking in here, measuring the exact height of the casters. And so I set my diodes at the caster height. And what I found was that it made leveling the speaker easier too. So like this is in a basement, it's a poured floor, so it's really level. It's a newer home. So it made leveling it less, I had to spend less time doing adjustments later on. So I actually took a caliper tool, and I'll show you here in a second when we're setting up these diodes. But I got each of the 8 diodes or spikes or feet or whatever you want to call them to the exact same using a caliper tool. But I took that measurement off of the caster first, just to start out with. Again, some of this is trial and error, right? And what I found was listening, I was like, especially moving from the Sabrina to the DAW is, there's something like, I can talk about this in another video, the differences, but there was something that I was missing as far as clarity or like a very fine definition in the sound. And, I did some adjustments with the nomograph, and this is kind of trial and error too. That nomograph is a good place to start, but you'll actually see that there's, measurements that are missing on there. So there's a little bit of guesstimate that goes into that as well. But I was kind of playing with the angle of, remember the AA spikes don't change, but the spikes in the rear spikes in the back and the ladder changes. So it's actually tilting this forward or backward, basically. I was playing with that, trying to get a little bit more clarity. But what I eventually found, like looking at pictures, visiting other dealers, looking at the V's, there were only, and actually reading the manual, like who would have thought to read the manual? They actually say to start out with like 2 threads showing and no more than that. I had like 4 or 5 or 6 threads because I was going off that caster height, right? To me, that was way too much. And it's kind of interesting too, because sometimes people will set these speakers on a platform or on a piece of granite or marble or whatever it is they do. I don't know. I just see videos or pictures of them. But that really affected, to me, the clarity of what I was hearing from the DAW. So again, trial and error, and this makes it easier once you have that jack, is you come down, get your jack out, crank it up. You can change the height of the casters super easy. And what I did is I took it down to like 1 thread, and that brought in so much more clarity and definition. They were just sitting way too high. And I think, the tweeter was way above my 42-inch listening ear height to it. So anyway, just to keep in mind as you're setting these things up, don't forget about the adjustment that you have in going up or down with your diodes. All right, so the next part in this is you'll have your upper modules in their own crate. You can actually pull them out by the plastic bag, or you can reach your hands in there and grab them out. But these are obviously on here already. You'll put the AA spikes go in the front. They always go in the front. And then depending on your nomograph or your listening distance and listening height, ear height, you'll set the back step, and I'll talk more about that in a second. These you can actually pick up, if you've got them sitting on the floor, putting the spikes on, you can actually lift these up, one hand in the back, one hand in the front. I recommend leaving the covers on just in case something does happen. You don't want to poke one of the woofers or the drivers or the tweeter. But these you can actually pick up and then lift into place by yourself. They're also heavy. The thing that to mention with these is when you're setting them down, I wouldn't come in frontward or backward. I would get over the speaker, you've got them, and just lift them straight down. That way, the spikes are going to be on it, and you have less chance of scratching the front or the back spike scratching any of the back here. So that's kind of like the best method that I found. Might clink back and forth within these side arms here a little bit, but that's okay. Just slowly lift it down. One of the things that I also found helpful, because I've seen this on a lot of used pairs of DAWs, is that people take these, I'm assuming this is what happens, is they've got these pointy AA spikes under here, and they move them in from the front, and you'll see nicks or scratches right up there where those hit. So what I recommend is some painter's tape, is what I used. And you can just take this out and roll this and stick it right there onto the woofer cabinet. You know, put one layer, go back and put a second layer, put a third layer, just in case you hit these spikes and you don't want to look at dents in your speakers or nicks or scratches in your speakers for the rest of the time that you own them. So painter's tape is your friend. Another tip that I found setting these up. For the next part of our setup tricks of the DAW, we're going to be going to the rear of the DAW. As we're going back, I recommend you getting one of these handy dandy things because sometimes it's hard to see under the upper module. And it's definitely hard to see, they changed this on the V's, but it's hard to see the actual measurements or numbers or steps that they have on the ladder too. So a pair of glasses, which I definitely needed, and one of these handy dandy lights. Let's go. All right, we're actually not in the back yet, we're on the side, but you can see how difficult it is to see this step ladder. So you get your light out and you can really shine it in there, and that helped me kind of see, I don't even know if I can be, oh, there it is. You can kind of see the ladder to kind of see what the spike is set at. You know, I'm about 10 feet away in my listening position, so I didn't need a rear spike. If you have a rear spike, it'll be easier because it'll give it more clearance. It'll tilt this woofer module up to be able to see it. I didn't need it, so again, it's kind of difficult to be able to see. So get your headlight out, flashlight. A helper helps a lot if you've got an assistant, but you'll need a pair of glasses, I'm assuming, to be able to see, unless you've got really good eyesight, to be able to see what your ladder's set at. This is a little bit better video. You can actually see the step ladder and then that rear spike that I've got it setting on. Again, I don't have any of the additional spikes, but it's the spike that's built into that upper module. It's I actually had it set wrong. I thought it was on one step when it was on another because I was adjusting it, like trying to eyeball it from the back. You really have to go around to the side to get a good visual, or at least try and get a good visual of what step it's set on. And again, that entails peeking through that little gap on the side. But you can see where the headlamp and the pair of glasses come in handy on this. Now we're in the back. You know, one of the things that I forgot to mention is that, you know, these connection cords, umbilical cords that connect, they actually go from the woofer cabinet and connect up to the tweeter module. They come from the factory with foam on them. These ones didn't, so I recommend putting a little bit of, if you've got foam, I don't know if that I'd put my painter's tape directly to those, because if it did leave a residue, it's hard to clean them. I guess you could clean them with some alcohol or something like that. I would put, just if you got leftover Amazon packaging, the foam that comes in them, put that on there and then tape them up, because they're stiff cables. And when you're dropping this top module down onto the woofer cabinet, if you don't cover those up, they can, not that you'd ever see it, but they could get in here and scratch the paint. You know, this is all finished and painted and polished in here, and you don't want to scratch that up. So I recommend, before you put the top module on the lower module, is to put some foam and some wrap painter's tape or whatever you want to do with these umbilical cords on the connection piece, just so they're not scratching anything until you're ready to hook them up. Onto that, one of the things that I noticed is they changed this on the V's too, but there's a lot, look at that, you can see, and that's just one side. There's a lot of clearance on the sides, and a lot of movement. And when someone says you can hear a difference in these on a 1/16 of an inch, you know, maybe my ears aren't that good, but I can hear a difference in 1/8 and definitely in 1/4 of an inch. And I would say there's about
maybe an 1/8 inch of play on each one of these sides. That you can see. So you'll want to eyeball the sides and get those set up nice. But there's also a front and back movement. And this I found out too, just messing around with these things, as far as the setting goes. On the DAWs, and it's not like that on the Vs either, but they actually have numbered markings on the Alexias that they can precision set this thing. Because this is the ladder. You know, you'll unscrew this, screw it tight. But once you unscrew it and move this in and out, I recommend sliding it all the way back to set them on when you first set them on there. But when you're setting the steps per your nomograph, this slides. And so because there's front and back movement, technically this could be front, forward, or backward of your opposing speaker, unless you take a measurement here. So there's a little bit of a, I don't know if my light can show it, but there's a little bit of a space that's machined out of here. Measure the distance between this step, this ladder adjustment, and the back to get them exactly. And then go left to right, and make sure that you get them exactly the same so they sound the same. Again, this is trying to get the timing exactly. And again, this is very minute little details, but I think at the end of your setup, you'll appreciate that you took the extra time. Again, OCD kicking in here, but you can actually just throw a tape measure down and again, get them aligned and measuring the same on both the left channel and the right channel. Just another tip that I found when setting these up.
All right, I think that just about covers it in the tips and tricks. Just some ideas that you can use, alternative ideas when setting up your pair of DAWs. I guess you could use this for other Wilson speakers as well. A couple parting comments that I noticed when setting up the DAWs, just as a summary. Again, when I was bringing the DAWs down in height from my diode adjustment, I noticed that there was much more clarity that happened in the music, in the vocal presentation, in the lyrics, in the sounds of instruments. They sound a little bit closer to me versus being so far back. When I had them up, it definitely did give like a larger sense of space, or if I was in a bigger type hall or bigger environment, indoor environment. But again, it's almost like you're back farther in that music, and you know, it might have been a little bit more three-dimensional, but when I brought them down, I noticed just so much more clarity, so much more accuracy. I just think it's a better way for them to be set up, to be you know, one or no, but one or two threads on showing on those adjustment spikes, or again, no threads showing. Some people say the DAWs might be too big for this room. You know, I don't think that they're too big. There's definitely an amazing amount of low frequency that comes from the DAWs over the Sabrina. There's definitely much more scale, but this is probably going into more talking about the differences of them. With the setup, I noticed like moving them obviously closer to the wall, and this isn't anything that you all don't know, but moving them closer to the wall, you know, there's definitely more bass. They definitely do need, I personally think that they need to be moved off of the wall a decent amount. You know, my listening setup is a multi-purpose area. So, you know, I can't have them way out into the middle of the room. Maybe they deserve that. I don't think you need them way out in the middle of the room. It doesn't look like it. They look like they're super close, but they're about this front. Actually, in the back, I think is like two feet off of the wall. You know, it might need another foot to be to sound like they should sound. And what I mean by that is they sound absolutely amazing. Don't get me wrong. I just think that they're in this size of room and having them a little closer to that back wall, there's definitely maybe an over exaggerated sense of size. So voices probably sound a little bit deeper than they should. They have probably a little bit more lower registers than they should. And I'm talking about a little bit, right? Not a ton. Like this isn't anything that's gonna say, oh, I don't think you should get the DAWs if you have a small room. I think they work in a smaller space. But they could be, they like room. They, you know, if you could pull them out, that it would help it sound more natural. I think the DAWs have a richness to them. I like to use the term a soulful sound, but they might have too much soul close to the back wall. The other thing when setting them up, of course, and this is probably something that again, that you all know, if you've got them next to a sidewall, don't have that dimension from the speaker to the sidewall be the same exact dimension as the front and back. You know, there's something that happens with sound waves, coupling it when you do that. So have the dimension be different from the front and back sidewall or rear wall. Have that dimension be different from what your sidewall measurement is, I guess is what I'm trying to say. The other helpful thing that I found in noticing setup, and again, you know, these things sound good even if they're not quite set up right, but they sound truly amazing if you start to get them dialed in. And that's part of the fun, again, why I wanted to do this myself. But what I noticed, even in a new construction home, and maybe it's worse in a new construction home because everybody's in a hurry, but my walls weren't straight. So if I was measuring, like trying to get the spike measurements when I showed you with those carpet sliders to a 1/16 of an inch, I got them there. But then what I noticed when I started using a handy laser level, and this is probably $100, you know, again, you made a big investment in this stuff. So this laser level from your listening position will get you down to your 1/16 of an inch too, which is very helpful versus having to, you know, crawl around with your hands and knees running a tape, which I also did. I guess it's good exercise if you like that kind of thing. My walls aren't straight. They were off probably about 1/2 of an inch to 3/4 of an inch, even just doing the left and right measurements. So what I did is I actually set up kind of an independent triangle from my listening position that I then kind of rotated, you know, again, right on center of my listening position, but kind of rotated like this, left and right, getting those speakers exact, not using that rear wall, again, because I found out that it's not perfectly square. So I think that that's all my tips and tricks. If you have any additional ideas, please leave them below. If you have any helpful insight of what I provided, to leave that good or bad, you know, that'll help us all out too. If you could leave that down there in the comments below. If you have any questions on anything that I might have missed in this, I kind of skipped around a little bit and just did high level differentiators that I think that I found out setting these things up, other than watching the Wilson video. Watch the Wilson videos first. But yeah, again, if I missed anything, just let me know. Hopefully this all helps in setting up your new to you DAWs. Cheers, guys.